Hey guys, here is the returners demo for Intro to Watercolors. So for the returners, I'm going to have some sea-themed props to work from, and you're going to be combining the techniques that you've learned so far in class to create a composition. So the first thing you'll want to do is figure out where things are going to be. I'm going to just lightly sketch out 3 sections here. You can use any technique you like, but just getting a sense of where we're going to put our different groups of objects. Okay, so I've marked this out. So I'm going to start with the shell, and you're going to be using an A pencil. I'll press down hard enough that you can see what I'm doing. Okay, so I'm going to start with the base, which is a flat line, and also a drafting line moving to the top, which is going to help me figure out where the highest point is. From here, I'm also going to make a line at an angle, and I'm going to mimic that angle on the other side for the base of the shell. I can connect these 2 areas now. And then I'm going to start by making the outline of the shell a bit wider than it is actually. So I'm just sort of looking from one side to the next to establish symmetry. And the reason I've made it wider than it actually is because there's an area where this scalloped shell is going to duck down. So I'm putting a second line just underneath this first large one. And then with that, I can duck in and just put faint line to kind of remind me where the shadow is. So I'm just carving out the space in between these scalloped edges. And I'm marking out the little area of shadow that moves down them towards the center. So all of these lines are going to kind of radiate out from here. You can alternately start by doing the higher points and then carving out the space after that. And now I'm going to take an eraser and lightly clear up any drafting lines before I begin. Okay, so I've erased my drafting lines. Now for this first layer, we're going to do a wet on wet technique. And we're also going to slightly reserve space. So I have a little bit of a white area kind of coming along the edge here. So I'm just going to wet down almost everywhere on this shell, except for a little section I'll leave clear at the very edge here, and then at the base there's a little area that I'm leaving clear as well. So this is the reserving space technique that we're using here. Moving in, leaving that little bit of a clear space down here. And I'm going to mix up my paints. So I'm going to start by making a gray, by mixing together ultramarine blue with a little bit of the brown. The reason for this is that colors in nature are actually muted. And I'm going to use this gray as a base to dull down the chroma of the colors I'm going to be using for this entire composition. So I'm just mixing together an amount of that. And then I'm going to mix together several pale tones to use on the shell. So in one of these, I'm going to add some yellow ochre. So just a small amount of gray, a little bit of yellow ochre, just so that the color's not jumping off the page. Although if you want the color to jump off the page, you absolutely can do that as well. I'm also going to make a tint that's a little bit more red using some of that vermilion. And one more, which is going to be more of a purple. So I'm just going to mix ultramarine and the vermilion together, which will make kind of a dull purple. Maybe a little orange as well. So I'll mix the vermilion with some yellow. So just so I've got a mix of colors, some more dull, some more bright. Starting with the lightest colors first, I'm going to start to put in these colors, but following. Okay, my paper's dried a little bit too much because the color's not bleeding, so I'm just going to re-wet down that area. So just re-wetting down, bear with me. There should be enough liquid on the page that when I start to drop in the pigment, it should spread out there. So I'm just dotting in, starting with that light value at the edge, and I'm just going to come around this in rings, moving side to side as I drop in the color, and it's just going to move into the areas that I've placed water. So okay, I'll come in with the orange now. So I'm following the C shape as I go along. Let me try to just bring down the, there we go, so you can see what I'm doing a little bit more. Drop in some red. So have fun with this. You don't need to just use the colors that you see on the reference in front of you on the shell. You can use a variety of different colors. And you can re-wet the page if you find that they're not blending smoothly enough. So just as I move down, I'm just re-wetting the pages needs be, and also mixing up additional color as I need it. You can also use the lifting out technique here and lift out a couple of concentric circles or semicircles if you would like. So I'm just lifting out little bit of the color. Going to do some pearls here. Feel free to use a coin to get a perfect circle. I'm going to make a couple of different sizes, so just bringing the exposure down on this. Okay. And the good thing about using a coin is you can have them kind of some behind each other, some in front. We'll have some references in class that you'll be able to work with. Okay, so I've got my circles. The next thing to do is mark out the highlights. So that means looking for where the light is hitting the pearl that you're doing. And I'm going to do a couple different colored ones. So we've got one here. I'm going to have, the light is going to hit here, here, and here. So I'm going to leave those areas clear. There we go. I think that's a little bit easier to see. And here. You want the light to be hitting sort of generally the same area. I'm going to use that gray to start with and use a graduated wash. So I'm just going to mix together a little bit more of the gray. So that's blue and brown. And I'm going to do a graduated wash moving in here. I'm going to use my brush or a bit of paper towel to lift off a little area of light up here. And then I'm going to mix together a more concentrated blue to drop in as this dries. And often there are a lot of different colors bouncing off of a pearl, so I'm going to add in some dull yellows as I move towards the lighter areas. And let's do that. I'm just going to leave this to dry. I'm going to move on to this one. So this one is a little bit more purple. I'll add a little bit of red to my light blue-gray mixture. And again, I'm going to start with a graduated wash. You could also do a flat wash and then just lift up from there. And then I'm going to make a golden one using yellow ochre. And maybe a classic one as well. So find a reference for a classic one. I'll do another one up here, maybe a smaller one. Hello? Speaking? Oh, I'm sorry. I'm right in the middle of something. Yeah, okay. So, sorry, I've got to go. Okay, bye. As my paint dries, it becomes easier to put layers in the pearls. and to add little glazes of color that might be bouncing back onto them. Finally, I'll make some seaweed using the brush technique that we've learned in class. So we'll mix together a couple of greens, adding a little bit of orange to the green just to make it more of a natural color. So one with a little bit of red-orange added to it. Maybe a little more yellow just so we have our own green. And then another green that has more blue in it, also dulled with a little bit of the red. For this, I want a little bit of extra drama, so I'm coming into my ink palette and mixing up a darker green for the base of the stems for these. I'm just dipping back into my colors, lifting up, pressing down, then lifting up. Picking up some more yellow colors. Now we'll use a smaller brush for some of these as well. And you can drop color back in while this is wet. So along the base, I can drop in some darker colors for the stems. I'll now consider the background. So I'm going to wet one area at a time just so that I have a background that kind of flows off the page. I'm just going to be using different tints of blue-gray for the background. finally, I'm going to come in with graduated washes to build up the shadows on the scallop shell and also on the seaweed, and just kind of make some of the shadows as I move along the composition a little bit crisper, because as the paper has dried, now when I put down layers of paint, they're going to show up as semi-transparent straight lines. Okay, now the fun part, which is always taking the tape off to reveal the completed work. So I hope this was helpful, and if you decide to do this again at home, do post your work on our Instagram. It's at Soho_life_drawing. Thanks for watching.